You're listening to Drinks and a Movie with your host, Rudy. Spoiler alert.
In the not-too-distant future, there will be no civilization. There will be no heroes.
They say people don't believe in heroes anymore. Well, damn them. You and me, Max. We're gonna give them back their heroes.
In the not-too-distant future, there will only be madmen and the main force patrol. Max is a main force officer trying to protect his family and stay alive. His only weapon, 600 horses of fuel-injected vengeance. Mad Max, the maximum force of the future.
Drinks and a Movie podcast. Yo, everyone, thanks for checking it out. I'm out here with co-host Matt.
Which for this podcast, I'd like to be referred to as the Night Rider. I want to be called the Night Rider for this one. So
the Night Rider. All right, everyone. So today, Matt and I are going to be doing a double feature episode. We're going to be talking about the original 1979 George Miller cult classic Mad Max, as well as Mad Max 3 Beyond Thunderdome, which came out in 1985.
Yes,
I believe. I think it was 85.
Mid-80s. So sounds like the mid-80s, but anyway, we'll get to that.
So yeah, we'll be talking about those double feature episode. Along with that, we are also going to be doing 2 rye expressions here. We've got Knob Creek Rye, just like your classic flagship, now with the 7-year age statement that came out. I want to say about a year ago they started dropping. So now I'm already out of breath. So that's really cool. And then also the Knob Creek Rye 10-year-old, which just came out. I got this while I was in Owensboro, Kentucky a few weeks ago. I just happened to be at the store when they first put it on the shelf, and I had to walk away with it. So it's still coming in at 100 proof. I believe it was like $70, $69.99. So basically the same as like what a Knob Creek 12 is. Yeah. But now it's a 10-year-old rye. So I completely forgot that this was going to drop eventually, and I was super excited to get it. And I did make a review video where I compared these two already, but that was breaking the seal on both of them. So now they've had a little bit of airtime. They're below the shoulder, and I've got Matt here with me. So
I'm surprised, by the way, you didn't break the seal when you bought it. Like, you had to keep that in the luggage. You took it home with you. I mean, that's a whole thing, dude.
Yeah.
That's some self-control right there.
Yeah, I really thought about it. But I was like, I need to save it. But
and we've been warming up with the 7 already. So, you know,
I haven't even sipped mine yet. I've been lagging. But
I literally just had, I finished up some Knob Creek 9 last night. So I had that directly compared to. And while I do like this, for some reason, that the 9, I just prefer, I guess, maybe the mood I'm in currently. My palate is having a preference for that. But it's still damn good. Damn tasty.
Well, I feel like you're very much like a bourbon person first anyway.
Yeah, it most definitely.
Yeah, Knob Creek Rye has always been a staple for me. If there was a daily sipper for me, Knob Creek Rye would be it. This is probably one of the bottles I've bought the most of.
Yeah, I got it.
And I don't say that about all of them because, I nurse stuff. I hold on to it a long time. But my Knob Creek Rye is something that I used to go through pretty regularly. I love it. I believe it's in the barely legal category where it's like just 51% rye. So it does offer a little more sweetness than some of the other ryes that I tend to like. So I think it plays in a very good middle ground, and especially just being a bean product. I love it.
Do they sell it in a bigger bottle than?
Yeah, they do. I think 1 liter and 1.75.
Oh, they do have 1.75.
Yeah.
I didn't see any at Total Wine. I was at Total Wine yesterday. I didn't see any there. And I was like, they only had these ones.
So yeah, I mean
tasty.
Man, the nose, I mean, for me, it's like a classic rye, but I always get a bit of like a brown sugar vibe off it. Yeah. I think there's quite a bit of like corn forwardness coming out too for me on this one.
I didn't do due diligence in putting the nose in there. I forgot. Oh, sorry about that. Don't break the bottle. Yeah, it even, to my nose, it even comes off like I can get a hint of sweetness in the nose.
Yeah.
Not overpowering or anything, but just that hint.
And I feel like it's always very consistent with the palate as well.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. That's a really good point. the nose, and then when I sip it, it seems like, oh, these actually things go together. Because sometimes when we were doing this stuff, they seem completely like you wouldn't even believe it. So
right.
This one absolutely.
Or like the nose is better. You're like, man, it smells so good, and then you drink it. Yeah, it's not even.
No.
Like I wish I got that. But yeah, I'm gonna go in for the 10 now. So I'm stoked to have these back to back once again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, were you gonna ask something?
No, were you nearby Claremont when you were out there? Is that far away?
No.
Okay.
I think that was still like another hour or so away, 2 hours from where we were.
So that's a drive.
Yeah, we were about 2 hours from Louisville, and I think some of these spots are around there. I'm not too sure, but
it's kind of fun actually having them right next to each other. Nose wise, man, I'm getting similar nose. I don't know.
It's very similar. There's more like ethanol jumping out of the 10-year.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Like consistently more, like it kind of burned my nostrils a little bit. And I think it almost has a little more of a black licorice kind of thing going on. A little bit. There's some kind of like, I want to say black licorice, man.
So I was going to say a little bit, the sweetness is a little bit darker to me, but that would be a black licorice thing for sure. Once again, I never trust my nose. My nose sucks.
You get the pepper. I get the caramel.
Definitely get the caramel.
Maybe like a clove. Perhaps I got to go back to my nosing kit and like remind myself that stuff. I want to say like a clove kind of vibe.
So are they barreling this at the same place? These would probably get barreled similar places. Mm-hmm. Okay. So most of the process is still similar. It's just that those extra aging years.
Yep. Yeah, they're all from Claremont. As far as like floor and which warehouse, I don't know, but well, because it's not single barrel anyway, because they're blending all these barrels to like fit a profile anyway.
Got it. For consistent taste. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going in. Definitely not the same taste to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Way different than I remember from the first time I opened it.
Wow.
I'm going to take a second sip before I...
Okay. Second sip was much more telling. I'm getting a fair amount of sweetness up front. The caramel. You mentioned black licorice. I'm not quite getting that. It's almost... I know this is a weird one to say, but it's almost a tad honey to me. And then as I move back towards the tongue, then the pepper kicks in, the heat. A good full flavor to it, though. I like this. This is tasty.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I didn't get that black licorice vibe. I think the honey note is really good. That's a really good
really
note.
Tasty.
Just a hint there. Man, you definitely get more of the char and the pepper and a little more of like an oak for sure.
Yeah.
Like the oak influence is very much apparent in this.
Absolutely.
I got a lot more caramel on this than I did on the 7-year rye. The finish is definitely considerably longer for me.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah, interesting like texture too and mouthfeel. It like really coats it. So this is like it's quite a different experience, I'd say.
It's interesting you mentioned like kind of, it's not the same thing, but you could think about it as like the Knob Creek 12, the bourbon. Yeah. And I would definitely, I would pick up a bottle of this like in a heartbeat. This is my kind of rye. I'm not saying the flagship doesn't do it for me. I'm saying this is a step up for me. I really like this a lot. And I think it's because of that fuller flavor I get throughout. I wasn't getting that kind of fullness when I had the 7. Maybe that was because that's what I started with. It's possible.
One note I forgot to mention was in my first sip, and I didn't get it on the second and third, but I got like a little hint of like a cherry. That was nice, but more as I go into it, I'm getting more char and oak that I'm not quite sure I'm digging right now. Like, let me go back to the 7 real quick. Yeah, now on the nose, this smells even sweeter and softer by comparison when I go back to it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's so funny. Yeah, much sweeter. But I got to tell you, sweeter in a good way. I got to respect that.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I just thought it didn't have enough flavor, but it's just a tad sweeter, but in a really, not in a cheap way, like, oh, we're sacrificing for the sweetness. No, I like that actually. That was better. That was much better.
It's pretty wild though how from like a texture standpoint, it does come across like quite a bit thinner than the 10. I feel like the 10 is still on my, like, it's not going away.
It's not going away.
But almost to like a bitter degree. Like my tongue doesn't necessarily like have a good taste to it. It's like kind of a weird bitter.
It's still there.
Man, that's like a really oaky rye for just 3 more years too. Like it's pretty different. You know what I mean?
Okay, back to the 10.
That's quite a bit different.
Yeah, it's wild how different that is.
I must have been on one the day. That's why I wanted to do this again And I wanted to do it with somebody, like, because part of me was going to wait till the podcast, but it's like, I'm not waiting. I'm just going to record a video on it. And I
surprised you waited as long as you did. That's what I was saying.
But yeah, my note that time was that they were very similar. The 10 just tasted like it had a little more depth and was souped up. You know what I mean? Like,
that makes sense.
I think I said in the video that it's like if Knob Creek 7 is a 10, or then the 10-year is like going up to 11.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, now it's quite a bit different. I'm going to go back to the 7 again right now.
And then like MSRP, is this like twice as expensive?
About, yeah. The 7, so Knob Creek Rye 7-year is, I want to say, like $35.
Okay.
And then Knob Creek Rye 10 was, I think, $69.99. So yeah, I guess that's double, huh?
I do try to like, okay, let's just do the tasting and try to do my best to ignore the price. But we live in the real world, so it's tough for me sometimes. And so that's the proposition. Is that twice as good as that? And
right.
I like it. I'm not convinced it's twice as good, but maybe it is. I don't know. I do like the 12.
Is Knob Creek 12 twice as good as Knob Creek 9 to you?
Damn. I feel like it is, but I could be kidding myself because I spent the money on the bottle.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, if it is, if it is, it is. But I was curious if you thought of that the same way.
So I just recently picked up a bottle of Sagamore, and that's about twice as much as this.
Right, yeah.
And I feel like it's twice as good, if not more, for me than some of the ones I pick up around. But maybe I don't know. The more I'm drinking this, the more I'm like, this 7's it's pretty good value for your $35.
I'd be interested. Are you willing to pour a little bit of your double oak?
Yeah,
I'd be interested to like compare. I mean, it's going to be pretty different,
right?
Because we've got, first off, Maryland style rye, like a barely legal blended with a 95.5 plus double oak. But I'm just curious, like at the very least, compared to like the 10, how that's gonna get. Oh, sorry, you're like breaking the seal.
Oh no, but that's for those of you. I drink bottles. Like I literally go through bottles. Like I'm not a collector, so. I've only saved one bottle in my entire history, so now it's just opened up, so it's not completely aired out or anything, but I think I'm gonna do the same thing with put it in there and compare. So this is the double oak, by the way.
Yeah,
just so people know.
Sagamore double oak. Yeah. I still got to try the small batch one, but also it's like I have so many Sagamore single barrels that it just seems kind of pointless now.
Well, if you ever want to get rid of any, you know who to call. I'm a fan now. Actually, I'm going to let that air out just in case.
All right.
I mean, you can see compared to color-wise.
And that's still the 7 in yours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the double oak's even darker than the 10-year.
Yeah, look at that.
Now, I'm curious. I wonder if by comparison, the 10-year is going to come across even more kind of bitter and oaky versus the Sagamore double oak, since it's known to be like on the sweeter, softer side.
Definitely. I mean, I think we've done double oak. Have we done double oak on the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's got I love the nose. It's fantastic.
I think I have. I think I've done it on my own, but we've done it in like other tastings, I want to say.
I will say, since visiting the distillery, I feel like I have tended towards ryes a little bit more than even bourbons for the most part, but it's not anything set in stone or anything like that. I mean, you're not wrong about the sweetness. Wow, that's really sweet.
The moment it hit my tongue, it's like, wow, this is like way lighter.
Yeah, way lighter.
Thinner. Yeah, it's super sweet. The spice by comparison is like pretty minimal.
Yeah.
You definitely get more of like that like marshmallow and caramel and soft.
And I know for Sagamore, like double oak isn't your go-to, right? Like that's not the one.
Correct. Yeah. For some reason, I'm like very much in the minority where it is not my favorite of the Sagamores. Like a lot of people, I think I'm the only person I know that like probably has that like pretty far down.
Right.
The cast strength, that one, I remember when I first tried Sagamore cast strength, I was like, oh shit, this is my favorite right now.
Yeah. It's tasty.
Yeah. And their single barrels are really good. The sherry finish is by far like one of the best things I've ever had.
Which, by the way, they still offer, but technically it's sold out on their website. And you can get stuff shipped from their website. I didn't realize that's actually available.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I recently had the candles shipped to me, but you can also have some of their bottles and stuff like that. I think some of the exclusive stuff they don't sell outside of Maryland. So, of course, some of the good stuff. But some of the finishes, they absolutely do. So.
Yeah. And we're pretty lucky. Like out here, we can get, I feel like, most of the stuff.
Yes.
It's just the distillery exclusives
Right.
that you can't get. All right, going back to the 10.
I'm gonna go back to the 7 because I've already finished my 10.
Man, the 10 is like just such a
10, these are good.
powerful nose, man. Like now, it's spicy for sure. You definitely get like the char.
Even the 7, by the
clove.
way, seems spicier than the
Yeah, really?
than this one.
The brown sugar, I kind of get maybe a little bit of a cinnamon.
I gotta tell you, my next bottle is definitely gonna be the Knob Creek Rye. Whether it's the 7 or the 10, I'd prefer. I think I lean towards the 10, but damn, the 7, $35. I'm with you on that. I'm coming around to Rudy's. That's my I can understand.
Yeah. Yeah, my like daily sipper rye and bourbon for me is both are Knob Creek. Knob Creek bourbon, Knob Creek rye.
I can understand why. Mine has been the bourbon, but
Yeah.
damn good.
And then beyond that, like some days if I were to put like another 2, then it would be Michter's rye and Wild Turkey 101. Those are like, if there was like a daily, I'm gonna sit and have a drink of
The
one.
Michter's Rye, by the way, is reasonably priced too. That was only like $35 or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I saw that in the story yesterday. At some point, I gotta put a bottle of that in the bar.
Yeah, they're both good. The 10, I mean, I do like, and it's an experience, and it may be like maybe the most oak forward kind of char forward, more aged rye I've had. Like I'm trying to think of other aged ryes I've had, like Sagamore 8-year. Man, that one's so good. I'm gonna have to like compare those. That one's so good. Lock, Stock, and Barrel 18, but that was a while ago, and that one was pretty unique. We did the Bullet Rye 12 recently, and that was like I should compare that too. That one was like not.
Yeah.
It was very forgettable, like in comparison to this.
Sadly, kind of agree with you, but
Yeah.
Bullet has a special place in my heart. It's one of the bourbons that got me into bourbon.
Yeah,
but at the same time, as you start exploring outside of it, you understand Bullet is trying to appeal to a wider audience, than some of the other ones.
I mean, regular Bullet Rye, I still dig. Like if I was,
fine.
bartending again and I'm doing shots, like that's going to be my shooter
There you
for
go.
sure.
Okay.
Or
nice.
If there's not a lot of options, like that's what I'm going for.
Totally.
But the 12 just isn't any better.
Right. Yes. Especially when there are so many good 12 options out there. So
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Old Overholt 10, but that's a cast strength. That was good. So yeah, maybe I'll do a video or a blind tasting of like some of the more aged ryes.
It's a bummer. Like one thing that I've found a little bit frustrating is that I have, and I don't explore and I don't go around to as many liquor stores as you do, but 12-year-olds seem tough to find on average. And yet I think they're like the best price point. You get such good value and taste out of that vintage, that amount of age time. And it sucks that that's the one that's toughest to find because they're reasonably priced. They're almost always under $100 or around there, and you get a lot for it. So,
yeah, I mean, it depends. And I feel like, because 12s you definitely find more in bourbon land, and that's the thing. It's like I agree. Like it seems like that's kind of a good sweet spot is the 12. It's not.
Anytime it
too
gets over
much,
$100,
it's
I
not
start to
too
hesitate.
little.
Under 100, I'm like, okay, I can pick up a bottle of that.
Yeah, for sure,
So-
for sure. And I mean, I'd agree with that. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I have to say about these. Like, they're both good. If you get a chance to try the Knob Creek 10, I love the label too.
Yeah,
like
it's a
they
good
just
label.
kill it with it's like a darker shade of green, and then the lettering is gold. It's just super classy.
I literally don't want to throw away this bottle when I still have my 12 and the bottle just feels good in the hands.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing about it.
Yeah, no, their whole I love the shape. I love the texture, like wavy glass. Like their whole Knob Creek thing is just great.
I had to recycle a couple of bottles recently and I'm just like, oh, it's so sad. Gotta figure out something to do with it.
Luckily, Knob Creek you can pick up anywhere. Thank goodness.
That's
But yeah, man. All right, let's get into Mad Max over here. So let me actually pull up a synopsis from
there you go.
IMDb. So once again, we're going to be talking about, we talked 2 whiskeys, I guess now 3. So double feature movies, double feature whiskeys. So let's start with Mad Max from 1979. In a self-destructing world, a vengeful Australian policeman sets out to stop a violent motorcycle gang. Okay, directed by George Miller. And written by George Miller.
It's his first movie, right?
Yeah, his very first movie.
That's what I thought.
And James McCausland and Byron Kennedy.
After being a physician, by the way.
Yeah, he was a doctor, or
Yeah.
I always thought he was an EMT, like the ambulance
Right.
person, but I guess he was a full-on doctor. And it's pretty wild that, I mean, he talks a little bit about like growing up, there wasn't much to do.
Right.
But like the movies was one of those things that was a big influence. And it's wild that you can, you know, be a doctor and go that far into that and just be like, okay, I'm going to go make a movie now. Like I want to know more. And I struggle to find like older interviews with him of like what that process was and how did you just go and
that specific part of it. Yeah. Cause there's some really good behind the scenes interviews with him a little bit after I think he had done Thunderdome. There's a 2 hour, it's longer than the movie. There's a documentary out there that helps a lot with, cause they interviewed everyone. The people who worked on the cars, the stunt folks.
I wish I saw that.
It's on YouTube. It's great. I literally just watched it a couple of weeks ago randomly before you even asked me about this because it's really good. And you get to hear why he chose the cameras and the lenses and how he got a hold of all the stuff. And he doesn't talk too much about how he ended up making a movie, but he did mention that he had seen a lot of terrible car accidents in his ER, you know, and that's kind of gave him this idea for the film. And it definitely shows up. I'm curious, before we get into that, like, when did you see this movie? Like, what's your history with it?
Yeah, I don't think I saw it in its entirety until either late high school or early college for me.
So before Fury Road?
Yeah, before Fury Road.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was down with Mad Max like before Fury Road came out. To the point where like when that first Fury Road trailer dropped, I was super excited. Because I really loved I really enjoyed the Road Warrior, which we talked about a few years ago.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I remember that being the one of like, oh shit, this is cool. Like this is Mad Max.
Yeah.
You know? But I do have very distinct memories of seeing this in parts as a kid because my dad, when DVDs first came out, he got it on DVD, and I remember like the DVD image and like young Mel Gibson and.
It was a staple at rental houses. Like you would always see the Mad Max trilogy. Yeah. You could always rent that back when you could rent movies. So.
Yeah. And so I remember him watching it and talking about, you know, different scenes. And there's some that still like, it's funny watching this the other day as an adult. I think like I remember being a kid and seeing specific moments, like the whole opening, like Knight Rider scene and the cops trying to chase them and then they're crashing and the guy has like the voice box thing now because he got his throat slashed. And, you know, the bulging eyes close up, that's super bizarre that I think they did once in Furiosa.
Yeah, they did actually. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember very clearly, I put this on the Instagram, when there's that first introduction of it, it's like all this, you know, the cops are trying to get him and you hear it on the radio and the camera's on like the side of the car and you just hear the engine and it's idling and the camera tracks up the side as he puts on his shades and then it goes and kind of pans into the side view mirror and you just see his like lower half of his face as he's putting his gloves on. Like I will never forget that shot. And like, even it gets me so giddy when I see it as an adult. I'm like, I just remember that moment is so good.
I totally agree. Unfortunately, I came to this movie after Fury Road. In fact, really very recent after Fury Road. So I'd seen Fury Road in theaters. I ended up seeing it like 3 times. Yeah, so it's one of those movies you great in the theaters. But I remember the first time I saw Fury Road, I'm like, this Mad Max thing, this sounds cool. Let's go back and watch some of these. And the first one I chose was Mad Max. And think about, you know, a couple days after you've seen Fury Road, the first 15 minutes, this first opening chase scene, I'm like, holy shit, he was doing this 35 years ago or whatever. So totally hooked. And as I rewatched it this time, I'm glad I rewatched it because I realized I had forgotten a lot about it. And the things that I remembered from watching it that first time were some of the bigger set pieces, the opening sequence, the unfortunately the wife getting bumped off and the kid getting hit. I remember that part. And then some of the kind of transitional chase scenes. I kind of forgotten the other parts of the movies are very different. It's not a chase movie, you know, and I'd kind of forgotten a lot of those details going in. But I do remember really thinking that like, man, this has this like 70s independent vibe from time to time, but then also some traditional like Hollywood type things where we're kind of a detective movie or, you know, kind of like there's a case to be solved kind of movie kind of thing. And I remember thinking after seeing Fury Road, I'm like, oh, there's trees in this movie and there's walls. There's like,
grass
all these, and grass.
a police station and an ice cream shop.
And people having conversations, not just spouting off things, So it definitely has a much different vibe than everything else. But all things considered, I even respect more nowadays, having watched that documentary, that like, first of all, this is your first movie. And there's so many, you can see how there's a style to this film, and it's got a lot of great things going on for a first time.
It's pretty crazy, for a first time out director. Dude, this is what they made is pretty insane and very ballsy. And even at this time, they're really leaning into the stunt work.
Oh,
and
my
people
God,
definitely got hurt making this movie.
Had to.
Like, there's a part where the two motorcycle guys like crash and they're like sliding down the road, and one of them gets hit back in the back of the head with the other motorcycle, and like all that shit's real. Dude. And yeah, it's pretty crazy what he was able to pull off. And my understanding, like, I need to do more research into this, but this kind of ramped up the Australian film industry. It wasn't a big industry. No, and this movie kind of sparked it, even though it's, it really does fit more of like a 70s B cult movie. Sure. Like it seems like something that would come out of like Roger Corman, and that's not knocking it at all, because we got a lot of great films out of this, but this definitely has that vibe, and probably even more so in the sequels. But
it absolutely did. And there was an Australian film scene prior to this. At the same time, this one was commercially successful all over the place, and probably most importantly in the States. So that said, oh, okay, we can put money into this. We can go. It's okay to invest in this type of cinema. The wacky thing, and I never saw this part, but apparently my dad saw it in theaters when it first came out. We were talking about it, and it was dubbed over. It had American voiceover the first when it came out in the States, which seems completely pointless.
Yeah,
we speak the same language, but and my dad said he didn't quite remember that part about it. He just remembered all the cool chases and the action and all that kind of stuff. And thankfully, if you watch it nowadays, it's the sound actually sounds wonderful. Did you watch it recently?
Yeah.
So like one of the things when we get into Furiosa later, I loved the way that movie sounded, and all of the movies have sounded. But in this one, like even back then, it's really well done on the sound side of things.
They really leaned into that. Yeah, like just again the engines idling and the roar and the growling of the engines, and it's funny because I've never been into cars. I've never been a gearhead in that way or anything, but man, do I love it in these movies so much. Good. Like
it's almost another, I mean, it is another character. It's not almost. The vehicles are another character, are characters of themselves in all of these movies.
It truly, like the V8 the last of the Interceptors, like is truly, like you said, and it's funny because it's not even in the movie that much.
No,
and I'm pretty sure it gets destroyed in Road Warrior, but yet to me, it's such an iconic car. Like it's so iconic. Like if I was a billionaire, I would buy a replica of Mad Max's V8 Interceptor, like for sure. Yeah. Even if it didn't go as fast, but I would have,
Well, that's the thing. So George Miller talks about this, like one thing that the pace, just when the action is happening, because in between that for this film itself, it's a little bit more paced like a traditional, maybe movie, but the chases feel so fast, and it feels like everything's happening. At times it was, but at other times he was talking about how shooting low to the ground. Yeah, really that was the way, because it was so wide open. Other places, it's one of the things that helped with that sense of speed, because it looks like the cars are going a gajillion miles an hour. And I'm sure other times he cranked it up, and all those kind of the filmmaker tricks. But it really has a great feel to it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I really noticed this time around that it's funny that I didn't really catch on before was it has a Western movie. Like it's less like dystopian post-apocalyptic. And even though this is like, it's funny too, it's equal parts frustrating, but equal parts cool that George Miller just doesn't seem to give a shit about like timeline.
Dude, does not care what's
happening. It's like, even, the Furiosa trailer, when it's like 45 years after the collapse, it's like, wait, so wouldn't Max be like 80 years old? Like,
you don't care.
What's happening? Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
But it's like still, a modern society, and there's not like nuclear war yet. No. Like we would be explaining Road Warrior. Yeah, they had TV and shit. But it comes across more as like a Western movie. It's like a classic Western like revenge movie.
Tropes with the family and he's got his partner, you know.
The partner, just like the sheriff station, you know what I mean? Like the cops.
Internal of, you know, there's internal strife sometimes between how, you know, being assigned certain things and stuff like that. Absolutely.
And the law not, you know, doing the right thing. Like when Johnny Boy gets off easy for doing what he did.
Right. The gang being able to do whatever the hell they want, basically.
And even stuff, just like visuals, like when they go into the little towns, it almost seems like a Western town. I remember when like we first meet Toe Cutter and the full gang and they're at the train station and then he like grabs that guy's face and they see like the coffin with Knight Rider's body. You know, like that feels very much like that is very much a Western movie.
Miller was even saying, interestingly enough, he definitely went for that. He grew up on those films. At the same time, part of it was his experience where he grew up in Australia, you know, what we might consider the suburbs. It was his town was like this. You know, it kind of a slow town, if you will, Midwestern town, if you will. It just happens to be in this, you know, great outdoors landscape area of and I also on this rewatching, this is totally kind of random, but thinking about some of the locations and the Western feel, it seems like if you want to have any sort of entertainment, you go frolicking in the grass. Yeah, apparently that's because there's like 3 or 4 different times where somebody's naked frolicking in the grass, somebody's making out in the grass, somebody's having later on him and his wife have the, you know, the really nice moment in the grass. Like there's all these things that just happen to happen in the wooded areas or the grassed areas of these locations, which where there's, and then you go too far and you're at a coast, you're near water or something like that. It's kind of interesting using those locations that way.
I will say there are, and I don't know if this is just him being so new at it, but there are some weird like editing choices and just moments that still like, I remember when I was young came off very bizarre to me and are still bizarre to me. The biggest one possibly, and Toe Cutter, the way he acts is crazy, but I'll go with it. It almost seems like a weird hippie to be like just, he's on drugs, kind of, I don't know, cult leader thing. But I remember like when I first watched this movie, like for the full way through and not just like bits of it with my dad, when we first see Max like at home after the opening scene with his wife and his kid, and he's sitting at the table and the baby's there and you just hear like the score of like saxophone music. It's all right, you know, whatever, 1979, whatever. But then the camera is kind of panning along. And then his wife is just literally playing tenor saxophone in the kitchen. It was so weird. Like I was like, wait, what? Because you think it's just the score, like it's the soundtrack, and then the camera moves and his wife's just there, like jamming out, just solo tenor saxophone while he's sitting there.
That's what's happening in your near dystopian future. That's what happens.
Like it's so, like I couldn't just, I don't know, I just couldn't even. You know, we know a lot of musicians, but even if I was, let's say I was dating a girl that was a trumpet player, I couldn't imagine just like sitting in the kitchen having a drink and she's just like there at the table playing excerpts. You know what I mean? It's super bizarre.
It's so bizarre.
And then the next day when he's trying to cheer her up and he has this weird like Halloween mask that he like puts on to make her smile. And then it cuts to a shot of the kid like just on the ground with toys, but he has like a gun in his hand. You remember? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like the baby just has like, dude, the baby, it's that same scene. It's early on in the movie. Please look it up. And I literally rewound it. I was like, wait, did I just see that? It's like the baby sitting on the ground, probably like 1, 2 years old, maybe. Yeah. The baby sitting on the ground with like toys is there, you know, bickering. And it cuts to a shot of the baby. It's like toys, but it's holding like a revolver handgun.
I didn't even notice that.
Dude, it's really bizarre, but it's hilarious at the same time.
There are a couple of times, and it's probably a function of what they had available budget-wise and stuff, where one of the things I actually think George Miller does so well, and a lot of things we praise him for, rightfully so, is about being able to understand our place in the world, you know, and almost always he does a really good job of keeping us oriented pretty well. A couple of times where we cut the different sceneries, like when they're at, is it their grandma or their aunt, the older lady's house? May. All of a sudden we cut to a forest and I was a little disoriented. I wasn't quite sure how that connected. I didn't see the connection. Maybe I missed something or something. But there's a couple of times where that's happened. And thankfully it doesn't take me out of the movie, but it's slightly disorienting for a moment. I mean, that was what they're going for.
I'd agree with that. And that's like some of the weird editing choices, I think. And I think I was talking to you a little bit about it earlier, and I don't want to say too much, but it's exactly what you just said, where there's weird moments where I don't, and granted, I was a little distracted when I was watching it this time around, but I've seen it before and I've always felt this way where I'm not, it's just weird how we get from one point to the next. It's like, oh, why are we
when
here?
His wife gets down to the beach and stuff, I got like, the guy tells us that the dumpster, you know, the place is down there, but you don't see it in the, you know, and once again, it's just some weird, it's a little disorienting, you know?
Yeah. So. Odd. And then those locations are like pretty different too. Cause you can go beach to now the woods and now they're back on the road with like just dirt or whatever. And, you know, one of the scenes that does, or shots that does stick out to me too, when I was a kid was, you mentioned this earlier, the wife and the kid Jess getting murdered by the motorcycle gang. Like I'll never forget, man, just the running. And then you just cut to the motorcycle going by and like the shoe and the ball rolling on the street. It's a good shot. It's a good way to convey that without showing anything. And yeah, it is pretty heartbreaking for sure, man.
The big takeaway I take from this film is I read or heard recently that like our brains, we give a movie anywhere for like about 15 minutes or so for us to accept the world that they've created. And I think that's one of the things why so many of us are fond of this film or have good thoughts about this film is because starting the way the movie does with this incredible chase sets ourselves in this world and gives us everything we need to know about the world right up front that like I said, I had forgotten a lot about the details after that, except for that he loses his family, you know. And I don't think his daughter actually died. No, she's back in the roadway, right? The daughter? No, okay. Maybe the daughter has too. Sorry, my bad. But anyway, I just that it's so well done in the first 15 minutes, and it's so smart to use so much of your effort in that first 15 minutes that a lot of the rest of the film, for most parts, isn't nearly it. When you're thinking back on the film and thinking about the experience, I don't have to think about it too much because it's so impactful what happened in the first 15 minutes.
Right.
So a good lesson to take away, like grabbing attention, setting up the rules for your world. Because literally the beginning of this movie sets up basically all the movies, if you think about it. Like this is the template for everything else we're going to see in this franchise kind of thing. So
yeah, one thing I never paid enough attention to was also the fact that, or I guess I forget about this, is how, like you said, it does set up the other movies and what he's going to do. And the fact that for him, like he's the best cop, right? They say he's like the best pursuit guy. You know, they even entice him with like, oh, hey, here's the last of the VA. Like you're going to get the job to like entice him to stay. You know, that's the dangling carrot for him to keep his job. And, you know, how he doesn't want to do it. And I like the scene where he talks to the chief about, you know, everyone's kind of crazy out there. And he's like, I'm kind of like that. Like I'm enjoying it. I like doing what I do. Yeah. So I'm like just one step away from being like everybody else. And I just want to get away from that. And, you know, besides the fact that it's also dangerous. And, you know, we've learned that like him and Goose is a character I love. Like they have such a good dynamic. They're really good at quickly showing their friendship in like a short amount of time with the way they interact and talk.
But it also sets up the world too, because you see how he has reacted to the world and how Max and Goose juxtapositioned against each other, how they react to it. So.
Yeah, Goose is very much into getting the frontier justice if he has to, because he doesn't believe in like what the law's doing. And I like that too. I love that too. That whole thing when Johnny's like, you know, gonna get off clean, and Goose doesn't want to let it go because it's like, how are we not going to punish this guy for what he did to that?
He does not want to let it go.
Yeah, and you know, we're told early on that this gang they want your guys' blood because you killed the Knight Rider or whatever, and so I did like that aspect. It adds more depth to the whole revenge aspect of it. Then it's one thing if like, okay, they kill the kid and the wife, for sure you're gonna want blood, but that just adds more to it, that he wanted out and he was trying to get out and he knew that, you know, he was kind of teetering this line. Yeah. So it makes it more believable that like, okay, I'm gonna go back to the police station and steal this fucking car, right? Like just kill these guys.
Yeah, just literally out for murder, out for vengeance.
Just go completely rogue.
Yeah, and a great sequence, by the way. But it's good to see it in context. It's not my go-to Mad Max film for sure. Fury Road and Road Warrior are definitely mine. I haven't seen Road Warrior in a little bit, but it doesn't. We don't get those great films if we don't see this. And for a first-time effort, it's unreal.
Yeah. I do. It's crazy. I forget how long it takes to get to the point where Jess and the kid get killed. Like it's pretty long, like far into the third act.
We're way far. I mean, we don't have much for the film left by the time we get there. So
yeah, and I feel like that's where it really, even as I was watching it, to me, it's more so the opening and then the closing than
the bookends.
Yeah, everything in between. I do. Again, I like everything with Thunderdome. I like everything with Goose. I think he's a good character, and I still get really bummed out that he gets really fucked up. It's like a sad moment.
Oh, brutal.
Well, even and then they go as far as to show like his wife in the hospital too, and she's got like body parts missing, and they're like, "Yep, here's all the damage." And I'm like, and I guess that's
use of lights, by the way, in those scenes. Right. Yeah, some cool lighting.
And I guess that is where like the doctor aspect of George Miller comes out, where he's like, "Oh, we're not just gonna, we're gonna show you like the aftermath. This is really what happened. Possibly like the worst part of all this." And when they're just talking about like, there's no fucking hope for her, but we'll just tell him that it's going to be okay. And he's like standing outside the door listening.
That part's super interesting because you actually don't get that in any other films. Like maybe in Furiosa when we get there, we'll talk a little bit about that. But for the most part, you don't get to see a lot of the repercussions and the ramifications of things like that, for sure. That's actually a really interesting part. Maybe that's why this film feels so different too after these after besides the ending and the beginning of the movie. So I hadn't thought about that.
What are your thoughts on Toe Cutter, if anything?
I love the name. What am I?
I like the performance. I think he's an interesting.
So for
guy.
actors
that he hisses,
that I'd never seen. I actually thought all of them do really well. They're all caricatures, right? Like so, Toe Cutter doesn't get an arc. A lot of the other minor characters don't get an arc. The only one who really does is Max, and so like He's kind of one dimensional at the same time. I like some of his quirks and stuff like that. I think that's fun.
I do like the dynamic between him and there's like Bubba Zanetti is the one with like the bleached hair that's all quiet.
I can remember that. I can rarely remember any of these people's names.
I think I watched it 2 days ago.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So,
but then Johnny the boy is
Johnny. You remember? Yeah, totally.
Now so I do getting into the final act here.
Yeah,
I do wish there was a little more. He just runs some people off the road. Toe Cutter goes out kind of easy. I don't know. We do see the body go under the truck. It's actually kind of crazy.
It's destroyed.
It just gets completely massacred.
That's edited, by the way, perfectly.
Yeah.
Yes. This is and this came up in Road Warrior when we talked like when you do these, like it literally looks like there's somebody under there, but
But and we set up like they shoot his leg out and run over his arm. And that's why in the Road Warrior he's got like the brace and the sleeves cut off and all that. And so I like that aspect. It is kind of weird though that they do that to him, and then the one bad guy is Bubba's trying to run him over again, and then he just gets shot. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay,
could have done it in the first place.
It's kind of weird. But I do love, man, the final kill of Johnny the Boy is such a good. I feel like for me, that's the scene of the movie. That is like the Mad Max scene. The not saying a word, just dragging him over there to like put these on.
Hey, listen, man, will you listen to me? There were a hell of a crazy people back there, man. Some kind of bad people. I'm not responsible for anything. What are you doing, man? What did you say? What are you doing? Hey, listen, I'm not a bad man. I'm sick, see? Like I'm sick. What do you call it? Psychopathic. The personality disorder. The court, man, he said so. You're not gonna hurt me, are you? What are you doing? I want to know what you're doing.
The chain in those handcuffs is high tensile steel. It'll take you 10 minutes to hack through it with this. Now, if you're lucky, you could hack through your ankle in 5 minutes. Go.
You're mad, man. You think I look silly, don't you? Stop breathing on me, man. Don't do this to me, please. Oh, please, Jesus. I was dead. Stop breathing on me,
And then just that shot where he's driving off and then it blows up in the background. I love that. I don't know.
It's great. I'm not a revenge guy. So my dad, by the way, totally is. And we've talked about this quite often. So it reminds me a little bit of, I've got Man on Fire. Have you ever seen Man on Fire?
Once. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
He basically goes revenge throughout the film and finds all these different ways. He sticks dynamite in somebody's pants, very similar to what happens at the end of this movie. And so for me now, maybe because I've seen it so often and this, I don't react to it as viscerally as I used to, at the same time, it definitely sets up, like without that, he's not the same character in any of the next films after that. So I appreciated that. I understand, because the one thing I will say is that you get to see like Max is kind of like a happy guy, and he basically won't be happy for any of the other films, so so that everything. Part, he lost everything. So it definitely sets that up, and I appreciate it. And I don't know if Miller had a vision to make a franchise out of this, but it most definitely does all the work you need it to get you there. So I like that part. And just stylistically, it's a great way to, off a character that had done you wrong. Yeah. At the same time, I maybe I'm just getting older. That's one of those parts where I feel like I'm turning into a little fuddy-duddy a little bit.
He had it coming. Well, what's funny enough is I always think like, I'm like, man, I can't wait. Cause I know that scene's going to happen. I'm like, I can't wait till this fool gets whacked.
Literally at the end of the movie.
But I always forget that the one thing that almost makes me feel a little more compassion is when they do catch up to Goose before they burn him. And he didn't want to do it, but Toe Cutter makes him do it. And there's the one moment. But he still had it coming. He had a chance to change his ways, and he didn't. And that's what happens. He's like, he was already dead, man. He doesn't need his boots. What are you doing? I'm psychopathic. That's what the court said.
Gotta love it.
But yeah, man. Mad Max. Yep. You want a little more of the 10 or no?
I'll go for another taste of beer if you don't mind.
When we talk about Thunderdome.
A warrior, auntie. Lost everything. Looking for a deal.
But he's just a raggedy man. Today is necessary to kill a man.
What do you buy?
Vehicles, fuel if you want.
Who's the bunny?
Who run Barter Town?
Master Blaster runs Barter Town.
Okay, you said a clear fight. What do you mean by that?
Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
How do I get in there?
That's easy. Pick a fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
This is Thunderdome. Death is listening.
This wasn't part of the deal.
No mercy. Well, ain't we a pair? Raggedy Man.
When's your first time seeing Thunderdome?
Man, I saw this one, Thunderdome. I don't remember if I saw it before or after Fury Road.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I saw it before, because I usually, when there's a movie like that coming out, I'll make it a point to watch the previous movie.
Oh, yeah, go through the whole franchise.
But I've only seen it twice now. I watched it again last week. That was my second viewing. Beyond Thunderdome, 1985.
Tina Turner.
Tina Turner's Auntie Entity, and then we've got Bruce Spence is back, who was the pilot in the second movie.
I looked it up because I'm like, is he the same character? Wasn't he like? What am I missing here?
Yeah, it's almost that Sergio Leone style of casting.
Well,
like
he's got him flying the plane and everything. I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
He's like the same. Yeah, he's still a pilot, but he's a different person. It's a very bizarre choice for sure.
Don't get me wrong, I love it. Yeah. And actually, I think the last third of the film makes it. I really like. I think the connection works really great for the climactic plane scene at the end. So, but
let me pull up a synopsis for this one real quick in case. Actually, let me make sure I didn't. Oh, sorry. Going back to
go for it.
Mad Max. I did like when he's questioning that mechanic and he like lowers the car.
Oh, dude, yeah, man, that's a great scene.
That was a good moment.
Yeah, that was pretty damn funny.
Oh, Mel Gibson getting the role. I have to bring this up. So, Mel Gibson was like fresh out of acting school or whatever. And he didn't even audition for the movie. I don't know if he knows, but he was like dropping off his friend and he was waiting for him. So his friend was auditioning, but Mel Gibson had just recently gotten in a fight like the day or a couple of days before. So he was all banged up and bruised. And so they like just liked the look. They're like, hey, you look like a fucking nutcase. So
little did they know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Well, that's another funny thing. So I guess they, they like took pictures of him and they're like, all right, come back and then we'll see you do it. And so he came back and he met George Miller and they saw how he like healed up. And they're like, we need someone like you. Like you're kind of the real deal, I guess. So that's how he got the part. He didn't even go for it initially.
We didn't even talk about that. Okay. So that's super interesting you mentioned that because I've watched a lot of Mel Gibson films, liked a lot of them, but I did see Gallipoli. Have you ever seen Gallipoli?
No.
He made that in Australia as well.
Oh, okay.
So when I saw this film, I actually thought he was born in Australia and was an Australian person. Born in New York. He's an East Coast guy. He's
Gibson
American.
Is? Really?
Mel Gibson is American.
He's not Australian?
He lived there. He moved there when he was 12 or something.
Oh,
so
wow, okay.
I wasn't quite sure if he trained for that accent or if that's just what he developed while he was there as a teenager in his formidable years and stuff like that. I got to tell you, man, it's really challenging watching any Mel Gibson film nowadays. I struggle with some of the, there's tapes of him saying some really despicable things and it's very challenging for me to still watch some of his roles and stuff like that. I do try to put the art first, that kind of thing. I really have tried my hardest to do those kind of things, but it's still tough to just understand who he is. But at the same time, I was like, I am kind of interested in this. Like, did you develop this accent? I had no idea he was American. Thought he was Australian because he's in Gallipoli as well, where he's playing with an Australian accent. So I wonder if, like I said, like we're talking, did he develop that or was that just something that he
let's see, 12 years old? I mean, I can see him developing that at that
especially
point.
if all the kids in high school and middle school are using that and stuff like that. And so he was in Australia and stuff like that. And then came the fateful story, which is hilarious that, he wasn't even try it out for it. Really no.
I thought that was really interesting. Another funny thing is, I mean, I completely buy him as like a cop, but with like a heart of gold. He's not like a hard ass cop.
Not at all.
He's like still,
he's not
doing the right thing.
Max at all.
Yeah, he's like still, being a good family man. Seems almost kind of soft until it gets to the end and he has to do what he has to do. But I was watching this Q&A that I guess was from like a 30th anniversary screening of the movie or something.
Cool.
And pretty much everyone was there except Gibson. And the actress that plays Jess, I forgot her name. Everybody started laughing because she said, and they asked something about like working with him and all that. And she's like, well, he was always actually like kind of a crazy, edgy guy. And everyone was like, just started laughing.
That's hilarious.
She's like, no, even back then he was pretty.
That's wild, man. So he's like his character, he's Riggs in Lethal Weapon 1. Is that really what's happening?
I guess just, she's like, because you think of him now, like, the shit he's said and like there's the way he kind of reacts and acts. But she made it seem like, oh no, even back then he was kind of a weird.
There's so many films I adore that he is in, and it's that part's very frustrating because I've loved all the Lethal Weapon movies. I liked Maverick. I mean, freaking Braveheart's such a great film, and it's challenging. I haven't watched Braveheart since a lot of some of the stuff he's done. And it's such a good movie, and I've wanted to watch it again, but just giving the time to the guy, I don't know. It's challenging for me, man. I try to put that stuff outside of the art, but sometimes I just can't. So.
All right. Well, sorry about that. We'll move on now. I just wanted to.
I say, but all that stuff's interesting. That's what I love about like doing the research, and you get to see how, especially with the original Mad Max, just because the story behind it is almost as fascinating as the actual movie.
Yeah.
Just the money and the equipment they use and all that kind of stuff.
So Mad Max was apparently made for a budget of about $380,000. All right.
It looks more than that.
It's definitely for all the crazy shit they do. Yeah. So then the Road Warrior. The budget went up to $4 million.
$4 million because Road Warrior. Oh, for the second one. Okay.
Yeah. So Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, $4 million budget. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, $12 million.
It absolutely.
She said it was about 3 times more. So getting into. Let me find the synopsis now. We'll get into Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
It's Mad Rakatansky.
Max Rakatansky.
Rakatansky. There you go.
All right. Let's see. So 1985. After being exiled from the most advanced town in post-apocalyptic Australia, a drifter travels with a group of abandoned children to rebel against the town's queen.
That seems reasonable.
Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, well, I think we were saying, so I saw this for the second time. I saw it, I think, probably most likely before Fury Road. And I remember thinking it was all right. Like, I had no beef with it. It seems to be widely considered probably the weakest of the films.
Yeah.
And watching it this more recent time, I think I may agree with that. I do like it though. Like, I love mainly all the Bartertown opening, like Thunderdome stuff is cool. Like Tina Turner, Anti-Entity. I love
awesome.
that.
Yeah,
like,
she's fantastic.
He's got the long hair now. The whole like the Thunderdome, like the chainsaws, and they're like jumping around and doing this cage fight. Like, I love all that. So just the idea of this Bartertown, you know, they're building the world even more than they did in Road Warrior.
Yeah.
You know, now we're seeing like a little more people and all that. And then I thought the Lord of the Flies kind of kids thing was interesting. I think I liked it more the first time I saw it, but the second time I found myself getting pretty bored with it pretty quickly. And yeah, I mean, we'll dig more into it. What's your take? Because you watched this for the first time.
First time. And as somebody who loves Road Warrior, loves Fury Road, probably think Fury Road might be one of the best action movies like ever.
Yeah.
Not the best movies. Fuck that. Fuck the action genre. But such a great film. One of the greatest, best I've ever seen. So this is unfortunate because I knew a little bit what to expect going into it. I grew up on a lot of Tina Turner, just to let y'all know. My dad's a huge rock and roll fan, loves music more than anything. And River Deep Mountain High was one of his favorite songs. So I would hear about Tina Turner all the time. So I've got these somewhat preconceived notions that Tina Turner is larger than life. Okay. And I got to say that aspect of the film, she totally lives up to it. She looks like she's having a great time on screen. And I immediately I smile when I see her smiling at all the evil shit that she's doing. So that aspect, I loved it. I also, I felt the way that he created the world almost seems like, oh, no wonder Furiosa happened. Like, it feels precursor to some of the things he does in Furiosa. The world is so, the frame goes on forever when you walk into Bartertown and everything. Yeah. And it's just, and I was really blown away how well the movie looks. Whoever did the transfer, I watched a really great version of it. So,
yeah, for sure.
But then I was thinking about, I know it's tough. I try not to think about the craft side of things but I couldn't help it watching this movie because there's a lot of, like, everything's in focus. Whoever was ACing on this was fucking amazing, by the way, because there's 8,000 things going on in the frame and I always knew where to look, which is not an easy thing to do when you do these epic landscapes where you can see all Bartertown and everything going on. My initial reaction, chase at the end, unreal, awesome. We've got a movie called Thunderdome, and we see one fight, one Thunderdome fight, and that was I hate to say,
they're beyond Thunderdome.
They're beyond. I was a little disappointed in just one fight because the fight's awesome.
I agree with that.
The fight was so sick, and I only got one fight in the Thunderdome.
It almost feels like two different movies.
Dude,
that's the one thing that's like I think the most weird thing to me.
Yeah.
I just feel like all of a sudden it's a whole different movie now. Like, even like just the aesthetic, all of it, and much like the original Mad Max in terms of the editing, there's points throughout where I'm just like, wait, how did we get here? Like,
what
okay,
happened?
He's saving the kids that did leave the little oasis, but now we're at Bartertown, and now we're like taking the train and escaping. It's a whole thing. Like,
the pigs.
I think the chase, I mean, we'll probably just jump all over the place.
Sure.
The final act scene, I think there's
only like 3 plot points in the movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
the first time I saw it, I think I really dug that. Like the idea of being on like the train track and the other cars going after it. But then, I don't know, watching it the second time, it's pretty weak in my opinion, especially compared to Road Warrior.
Well, yeah.
And it's like they do all this stuff that's like pretty different. And then the end, it's like, oh, we're going to do a similar ending, but it's like significantly less than. And I think the other thing that like puts a damper on it for me too is then we have these kids, so they lean into like the humor a little bit more. Like,
totally.
Oh, I'm going to bop the guy with the frying pan or whatever weird
and
shit.
there's a fair amount of exposition during that whole period, which is almost feels a little out of place, or not out of place, but it definitely slows us down a little bit. And I think that
The exposition when they get to the kids. And
when they're doing, and everyone's talking about, your cat. What is it, Captain Walker?
That sounds right, Walker.
Yeah, Walker. So like everyone's saying what they remember. You said this, you said that, and blah blah blah, and all those things. So
yeah, which is interesting. I think it just isn't quite executed right, because I do kind of like this idea of him not even stumbling, but ultimately be saved by these kids, because their whole backstory is like, all right, they escaped on like a plane.
Right.
All the shit went haywire. The plane crashed.
Yes.
Lucky for them, they're in this oasis.
Yes.
And then the captain like left to go get help and like never returned. And now they're on their own. Yeah. So they
follow the instructions.
They like do, and they have to like retell the story so they remember their history and all that. Like, that is kind of interesting. And to save Max and be like, you must be Captain White. You're gonna take us home. Here's the plan. Like, take us back to Sydney. And I do like, it's kind of like heartfelt too when they have those little goggles you look through and it has like the pictures. I do kind of like that because I feel like their whole story and everything like builds the world.
What are those called? I
forget what they're called, but
those things.
It like just builds the world and reminds you that like, oh yeah, they were once lived in the time of like skyscrapers and lights and all that
these
shit.
Yes, the skyscrapers. That's right.
Yeah.
One of the things, so I did read Ebert's review later on. He gave this 4 stars. Freaking loved the film.
Yeah, Siskel and Ebert both loved it. I watched the episode.
Oh, you watched it? Okay.
2 thumbs up. Yeah.
And one of the things they pointed out, and this is, I think it helps for historical purposes, like the Thunderdome fight scene, they had never seen anything like that before. Right. So one scene was enough at that time period because there literally never been anything. It's your brain almost gets mind fucked trying to think about how, with these bungee cords and the chainsaws and all that kind of stuff. So like, it's tough to put myself in that place because we have so much more history since then, At the same time, the fight scene's awesome. And I think that's why I wanted a little bit more. I could have done with a little bit more Thunderdome and a little less kid stuff in the middle of the film. So for that purposes, but the fights, I still haven't really seen a fight like that before. It's still pretty awesome between him and
Master Blaster.
I do have to say though, I was already smiling during the opening credits because they list what the characters' names are in the opening credits. And you see all this. Yeah. Some of the ones. Why can't I never remember the names of these characters in the movies? But it was good.
Anti-Entity, Master Blaster,
but the Collector, the Master, the Blaster, Iron Bar Basie, Pig Killer, Blackfinger, Dr. Dealgood, Water Cellar. I mean, you got all these wacky names, and they're all Mr. Skyfish. They're all listed in the opening credits. So I think it's hilarious. So
I do love when he gets into Bartertown. Like, the guy trying to sell the water, clean water, and Max uses like what do you call it? The Geiger counter for all the radiation. But man, when they're going into Thunderdome and there's like the dude who's like the MC, I guess, with like the cane and I think he's got a hunchback or whatever. And he's like explaining, we put this together to keep our little civilization and blah, blah, blah. 2 men enter, 1 man leave. Everyone's chanting. But that great moment when the camera like pushes into this guy and he's like, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That is the best line. And like the camera pushes in and he turns into the camera and just such a character actor, real face, like, and smiles into the camera. Dying time is here. I love that.
This happened actually in Mad Max as well. The push-ins are fantastic. Like, and that's like a craft thing where it's like, that's not the easiest thing to do. It looks, kind of effortless when you watch it on film, but that is not an easy thing to do. And they've done excellently in all of his films. But this one, they've mastered it by the time they get to the third one.
Yeah.
Because it happens 5 or 6 times in the film and it works. It's really effective though. And it goes back to, one of his philosophies is keeping the action in the center of the frame. And so it's tough for me nowadays not to watch these things and be aware of it. But man, it just makes the action just flow so much. Like you're always aware. I struggled to get a full, and because I was watching on an iPad, which really sucks, by the way. This film was not meant to be watched on a fucking iPad. So like some of the scope didn't register like how big the Thunderdome actually is and stuff, And I was thinking, have you gotten a chance to see any of these on film by any chance or in a theater?
No, I don't think so.
I'm guessing they do play differently in a theater. And I'm wondering that's why they've had such, Siskel and Ebert had such a great reaction to it because I can only imagine being in the theater inside the Thunderdome. It's got to feel like it's, especially to the full size of the frame and everything, because it's shot in a way that's awesome, but you don't get some of that scale when you're watching on an iPad. So.
No, I'd agree. It's still like by today's standards, like everything in the dome looks really good.
Yeah, man.
And then again, just all these practical effects and them being on the cable and jumping around and all the people kind of hanging on it. Like, because it's a dome, but everyone's like all over it.
Looks like a jungle gym. Like it looks like something on the cafeteria or in the playground of a school. So
I did think like the whole Master Blaster thing is pretty strange. It does fit like what's been established in these movies already and what they'll continue to. But
here's where I got disconnected a little bit. So when the mask comes off, or the helmet, he's a kid.
Well, he's
it looks like
he's challenged.
I was going to say, like, it looks like it's kind of Down syndrome or something like that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think he says it like he has the mind of a child. Yeah,
that's why they say he has the mind of a child.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think I'm pretty like clearly.
I couldn't tell that he was physically disabled in somehow, but that part didn't register for me. Maybe because on the iPad.
That's the thing. Like he's a big, strong person, but he's like. You know,
he's got a disability of some sort. Okay.
But I think it's pretty clear too. I think part of what makes it seem weird is obviously when the mask is on, that's like a stunt performer. And then when they cut to the close up, it's clearly a different person who probably is way younger. That popped out to me more this time around.
I got disconnected there. I didn't quite understand it. So
because I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, it just doesn't. Disconnected, it is a good way to put it. It like doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, it doesn't track.
It's just to me, it's that's obviously a whole different actor, and that's why they're like framing it.
Yeah. It's neck up only.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird moment, and then they just like kill him anyway, which is pretty sad. And they take the little dude who was in Freaks. I forgot his name, but that actor was one of the actors in Todd Browning's Freaks, which is pretty crazy.
The guy who was partners with the
master.
Yeah,
the one who was like came up
did a great job, by the way. But
who came up with the whole idea of like the methane gas to power it, so they need to like take him out of it. But I love when he's like punking anti-editing through the periscope when he's like, "Who's in control of Bartertown?" all over the speaker. Man, I love that dynamic.
It's funny how those are the things, how fragile the society is, that things like that can break it up. They drop them into the pigs. And one of the things there's hints of this throughout the entire series, but not to go off on a tangent, but it's obvious that testosterone fueled dudes have fucked up this world in a lot of different ways. And so often that happens in all these films, like women are the people who end up like, so when Mel Gibson's character, when Max is outcasted, they leave him. Where do they take him out to? Where do they?
They say the gulag, but they just like put him on a horse and send him to
go. Desert, they put that stupid mask on him and away he goes. And he ends up somewhere where he's passed out or whatever. And then that woman, who's the woman? Why can't I think of her name right now?
Oh, I don't remember her name.
Yeah, but she's one of the people who saves him, which I always found kind of interesting. That and he's going to start setting the places for where we're going to go in Fury Road, like how important women are to the society and stuff like that. I love that. One of the things I did really enjoy about this film was the more details we get about. And I noticed that like some of the things here even set up Fury Road and Furiosa to a sense where we get little things about how important these people are to the world. The kid thing doesn't track in, I think, Fury Road or Furiosa. I don't remember kids in Fury Road at all. Were there any kids?
There were some of the little war boy kids.
The little war boy kids. Okay, yeah. But we get a war boy in this film. And were there any war boy or somebody with white face?
I think that kid just was wearing white makeup. I don't think it's supposed to be.
They didn't say war boy, but I was curious if he was actually. Yeah. So
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he like rewatched Thunderdome and he's like, all right, let's take that look and apply it.
Go with that.
But yeah, that popped to me a little bit more this time around. Dude, it's crazy. This movie didn't have a problem killing kids. Remember that one kid that gets like sucked into the sand?
Oh my god, so brutal.
I was like, they're gonna save him, and it's like, oh no,
nope. He ain't getting saved.
I guess you guys shouldn't have walked off. Well, here's a weird thing too. So when, he rescues that group of kids that just go walking off, then they end up going to Bartertown, make their escape. Yeah. And they get on the plane with Bruce Spence and they fly to Sydney. And I do like that. I thought that was an interesting way, like where you're, it's Sydney. Here's like all the destroyed buildings. Like everyone just forgot about that. And then they make camp. They're like, that's where they're going to reproduce and live and try to start over. But it seems like they didn't go back and get the other kids. Like, so they're just stuck at the oasis. That was weird to me.
That's what I thought, actually. I actually thought they're getting left behind.
Yeah. Like, that's a bummer.
Hey, they don't measure up, Rudy.
Yeah, like I hope you guys are going to go back. They told you not to go into the sand. The only reason you're alive right now is Max went out and pulled you out of the fucking thing. Yeah, that was all interesting.
My understanding is that George Miller lost his producing partner during this one. Like that's why the film was for whoever it was at the end of it. And so I'm curious. I'm always wondering too, like, did he ever think like might get a chance to make more of these films? Like, is he continuing on the world, or are we saying that there's some resolution to this? Because if this is your resolution to this world you've created and stuff, it is that aspect to it is a little ambiguous, I guess, at best. That you know, we assume they go on and go and do that stuff, but I don't know. It's so interesting that this is I'm curious where this came from, like this idea after making Road Warrior, which is like this, 2-hour chase movie, kind of thing. So I like the stuff with the pigs, but it was kind of weird. But it definitely, it adds a sense of tension to it. Yeah. Both couple times were there. The first time Max drops into it, I thought he was going to get, start to get bitten a little bit, but he doesn't. He gets saved pretty quickly. But at least there's tension there when we get there later on. When they return to Bartertown. Well,
here's the weird thing too. I mean, going back to the end is, so the whole thing with Anti-Entity and the crew is they want the Master because he's like the scientist guy that like helped create their society, and they basically want to keep him because he had power. They want to take the power, make sure that she's in full control, and basically enslave him to keep their society going. So the kids and Max steal him as well, and as well as the slave guy. They're trying to make their escape. Anti-Entity, what they want is this dude, right? They escape on the plane, and then Max is left behind because he has to sacrifice himself. But they don't kill him or anything.
No, they leave him there.
They just leave it. Why? I don't get why that happened.
That part did not make any sense to me.
They're just like, all right, well, cool, man. I guess maybe you'll just die out here. And they like just leave him.
Well, I mean, we may talk about that same exact thing in Furiosa, where they've got her, roped up too. Maybe that's just the way the rules of it. That's a great question. That one I bumped on that as well.
So. I guess there's no way you're gonna survive out here, but you've already proved us wrong because you came back and like wreaked havoc. But he's just a raggedy man.
Having put the whole film in context, I did enjoy it. There were just some things I would have appreciated seeing a little bit more of and a little bit less of, and I think. And by the way, I probably wouldn't have felt that way in 1985, although I was 3. I don't think, and it's okay, you can say you weren't born. So it's tough. It's sometimes tough to go back to some of these films with all of the baggage I bring to it after, many years of 40 years of film afterwards. So I got to say, we haven't talked about it enough, but I think Tina Turner's performance is like awesome in this film. And actually so is Max. I thought Mel Gibson did great as well too.
Yeah, for sure.
The guy you were talking about too, the partner of the small person.
Yeah. The Master.
The Master. Thank you. I couldn't think of his name. I thought he did awesome. It was like, there's some really great performances in here. So there's some things I really liked about the film. There's some parts where I would have liked a little bit more, from time to time.
And Max does say a lot more in this movie than he did in Road Warrior. He's actually got some shit to say. And I do appreciate, and Siskel and Ebert said this too, that George Miller did do something different. He went for it.
He did.
It's not just all right, let's just get on the cars again.
It's the same thing.
Even though they do that at the end for what to me is a lesser degree, but it is a whole different. The whole Thunderdome in Bartertown was a cool new way to kind of go about everything. And
I agree. And by the way, another dumb part where I didn't track correctly. This is, I think, an iPad problem. But when they are stealing the rig that's going to be the train and everything, I didn't realize it was on the track until they actually show the wheels on the track.
Yeah.
I was not tracking that at all.
Right.
But it makes the thing I love about what Miller does, man, is it makes the chase make sense. There's a reason they have to follow this one specific path.
Right.
And in Road Warrior, in Fury Road, even in Furiosa, there's always a reason for the chases that add real stakes to them. And I was thinking about this, I don't think that chase at the end of this film would have been half as good if I didn't care about the people that were involved and the reason why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So as much as I was a little bored during parts of it doesn't work unless I care about them. And I think that's one of the things that it's a testament to, okay, you did something different. I do care about these people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, shit. Well, I think that might be a wrap on this one. I don't know that I have much more to add. I think, folks, if you haven't seen these movies, give them a watch. Just know that you've got to have a specific taste and all that.
1979, 1985. They're a product of those time periods.
Yeah,
for sure.
like don't go in expecting Fury Road. Part of what made me really want to do these movies now is I was listening to another podcast and they're talking Furiosa and a little bit of Fury Road. And there's a lot of things I didn't agree with. And I have to be fair because most people nowadays haven't even fucking seen these movies and don't know. So I think, all that to say, I just wanted to make sure I hadn't said my piece on it.
It's absolutely worth watching. You probably won't return to them. I only did for this podcast. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I'll return to Thunderdome again. Maybe once, maybe twice, but like Road Warrior and Fury Road, I will continue watching.
I might go back to Thunderdome at some point down the road because I did get intrigued by Siskel and Ebert's review. I was not expecting that one bit.
Same here, dude. I was not.
It was really surprising how like into it they were. And
Ebert doesn't throw out 4 stars very often.
Yeah, so. And I came across some other YouTube like movie review people that did retrospectives on Beyond Thunderdome and like why they believe it's probably the best of the movies and why it's actually a really good film. So that has me interested in like hearing those perspectives and what they see that I don't, but maybe I'll give it some time. But anyway, that's a wrap on this one. Going back to the Knob Creeks, I mean, the 7 is obviously good. That's a hitter for me, but the Knob Creek 10, right? And I really grew on me more and more as we were going. It is, again, very oak forward. It's definitely more on like the bitter, I think astringent's the word kind of end of things, but not in like a really bad way. I feel like it's pretty unique. I don't know that I've had a rye that came across quite like that yet. So I'll have to do some other comparisons with some other stuff. What did it change for you at all as we were pouring it more?
Wrong, and I think you got to really check yourself when you're not. No, I agree. Especially comparing it right when we have it to do direct compares. Like you're right. The more I was sipping, I'm like, this is pretty unique. Actually, there's nothing quite like this now that I've had. And I haven't experienced as many rides as you, but like I agree with that, man.
Definitely more of a mood pour for sure. But I mean, I think the price is right too. Like there's not many 10-year-old 100 proof ryes out there, and then
for real.
When you get something like that from Knob Creek too. So hopefully they'll be popping up in California more right now. We're in the Los Angeles area. So far, I've got my bottle in Kentucky. So far in Southern California, I've only seen it in Mission Wine and Spirits. But I imagine Total Wines and everyone else will be getting them pretty soon. So
I remember seeing it already. So I'm sure it'll be out there very soon. If it's not already.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on this one. Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Drinks in a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks in a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksinamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.